them. I wanted to talk about something else that happened before we get into the guests. As we're leaving the studio on Wednesday. I'm distraught. Canada loses 1-0. Fonzie misses the PK. Everyone's very happy. GC celebrating. It was a big, weird time. And it was very Frank-esque in that regard. And we get word in a very sort of vague tweet from Kevin Aioli that the 282 main event is off. We're not getting Jiri versus Glover 2. We're now getting Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Blachowicz. We're like, what the fuck? What is going on here? Well, do a little digging. And what happened was Jiri got injured, tried to fight through it, was told, absolutely not. You can ruin your career forever. You're going to need surgery. He's going to be out for quite some time, more than a year, vacates the title. UFC calls Glover Teixeira on Wednesday and says, all right, it's you versus Magomed. He said he needed a little more time because it's a completely different opponent. How about Jan? They say no to Jan. They say, you got to fight Magomed on December 10th or you're out. He said, what about in Brazil in January? They said no. He said, all right, I guess I'm out. And then they go with Magomed versus Jan, which was supposed to happen on the card as a sort of number one contender fight. And now it's for the vacant title. And I got to say, like, I spoke to Glover on the way home. He was upset. And you saw the comments, you saw the posts. Guilherme Cruz, our own Brazilian beast, spoke to him. Like, this has been the company guy of all company guys, right? And he, I think it's very fair to say, felt disrespected by this. Now, I can understand why the UFC felt like they needed a title fight on that card. They had nothing else, right? There's no other title fight on that card. So I get that their backs were against the wall. Crappy situation. I totally understand why they needed a title fight. Don't get me wrong. And I totally understand why Glover was like, I don't like this matchup. Here's the part that I don't understand about this whole scenario that I can't quite wrap my head around. Why didn't they just do Jan versus Glover 2 as the main event on December 10th? It's a bigger fight than Jan versus Magomed. With all due respect to Magomed, not the name that Glover is, doesn't have the fanfare, doesn't have the resume, doesn't have the history, doesn't have all that stuff. It's a rematch, sellable fight. The first one was interesting. You could talk about how Jan was off and all that stuff, lost, shocking fashion, all that stuff. Great. And the winner fights Jiri, and Jiri has a history with both of them now. I just don't understand why they were so adamant to have Magomed Ankalaev in this main event when Glover's the bigger name and has the history with Jan, and it's right there for you, and he was willing to do it. Does anyone have any good reason as to why they went in this direction? Because not only did you disrespect the guy, he feels disrespected, and he's never felt this way. You seemingly picked the lesser big fight.
The only thing that I can think of is like what you said, is that they were like desperate to have a title fight on this one, and Glover wouldn't agree to the terms of December 10th.
But he said yes to Jan.
He did.
Oh, my fault then.
Yes, he said, I'll take Jan on December 10th.
December 10th. Okay.
And they said no.
It had to be Magomed.
It had to be Magomed. What he told me was they said Jan was too old to be put in that spot. And his response was, I'm older than him.
Yeah.
I have nothing then. I'm sorry.
I guess what, if you read the tea leaves, there could be something to the fact that they're saying at least one of the participants, right, has to be a young potential champion that we can build off, right? That, I guess that would be what they're essentially trying to say, or what he's saying they're trying to say, to be very clear. But I do not get it. I do not understand it. I do not get it. It's an assumption to a certain degree that he will win, right? If that's the intention, to keep him in the fight. And I don't understand it. And I'll be honest, though, I'm more confused about Jiri dropping the belt. That doesn't make sense to me.
And
why?
Is Glover just going to get the winner of this fight?
I mean, who the hell knows?
TBD.
What if it's an incredible fight and they're going to run that one back? Or what if it ends in a draw?
Jiri.
Like, there's no guarantees in this game. Plus, he's getting up there. Give the guy his final crack at the belt. You gave it to him.
100%.
By the way, don't forget, Jan beat Alexander Rakic as sort of, I don't know, unfulfilling, unceremonious as it was. He did beat him, and that was being billed at the time as a somewhat number one contender fight, if you recall.
Yep.
Then it ends the way in which it ends. Then Glover loses the belt, right? But it's an incredible fight. Then there was some talk, are they going to give it to Jan, right? They had that moment. Then there was the Magomed fight, and it was like, all right, fine. And it seemed like it went down to Jan and Glover. They go with Glover, but Jan already had that win, which everyone thought could have been enough. Why not just do those two guys together? I don't get it.
It seems like an endorsement for Magomed. Unsure why. Again, to your point, I don't think it makes much sense. But yeah.
You just said something. You said and I asked you why. Now I don't remember what you said.
Jiri, I said that's the most baffling thing to me.
Why?
Well, what is the
why not do an interim?
Vacate the title. Yeah, hold your belt the same way Francis has been out and hold his belt. There's no incentive to do that.
The whole thing is weird.
The UFC claims it's like the most serious shoulder injury they've ever seen.
Sure, I get it.
Francis
Ngannou's knee was completely blown out, and he's sitting on the sidelines with the real gold. Like,
he's about to become a free agent. You could have stripped him a long time ago.
Yeah, and
makes no sense to me.
If he were to fight in March, that'd be 14 months off. So that'd be giving you until next January.
Yeah, Jiri made a statement about it, saying, you know, out of respect and these things, but like financially, that doesn't really track. It could never be me. How about I'll say it that way? It could never be me. I'm holding that belt for as long as I possibly can.
Doesn't make sense. The whole thing is very bizarre to me. Whole thing is very bizarre. Yeah. Why did you want to do Magomed versus Jan so badly? Why didn't you just do Glover versus Jan? And then, are you going to give Glover the shot? By the way, I guess Yuri's going to be out for a while, so Glover gets it first. But what if Jiri? I don't know.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? That means
yeah.
Is this the way Glover's career ends? That doesn't seem very fair.
That would be incredibly sad.
And then
I think what's going to happen is that the winner of this gets Glover in
maybe
who knows when.
In the fall. Oh, sorry, in the spring or something.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
There's a lot of time for things to happen before then, right?
That is very true.
There's some big time other fights that are happening that there's a lot of time where I can see a scenario where Glover gets shoved out of this.
Yeah.
Not rightfully. So yeah, there's a lot to be played out here.
You bring up a good point about Jiri, because Jiri last fought mid-June, so that's 5.5 months ago. Why the rush? Unless they know for sure he's going to be out for a year.
Even so.
Yeah.
Why? What is the incentive? If I'm Jiri, right? If I'm Jiri, why? Why am I giving you back a belt that I just won?
This whole thing's so weird.
Now he's kind of a different dude, and the Bushido aspect and all these things, sure, but that doesn't my pockets don't really say that. That doesn't really make a lot of sense financially.
I guess he's not worried about the pockets. Not the same way.
Not. Listen, you go in the dark room, who knows what
that's what he said, out of respect and to not hold up the division. So yeah, it is an incredibly weird situation overall.
I feel like 282, it's been a while since they had to deal with something like this. There was a period, if you recall, New York Rick, where it felt like every main event, every pay-per-view main event was falling through. 282 was a highly anticipated card. It's still, you still have Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Robbie Lawler, Darren Till versus Dricus Duplessis, Bryce Mitchell versus Iliad Sport. I mean, it's a really good pay-per-view card, and it's quite deep. I mean, all the way at the bottom, you've got the likes of OSP at the very bottom, Chris Curtis versus Juan Buckley. But man, we lost Bo Nickel, which I was very excited about, and now we're losing this one, this main event. We had Alex Gustafsson on the card as well, but real bummer, a real head scratcher. Like when I was leaving and I was like, all right, why do they need this? Okay, I get it. They need a pay-per-view main event title fight. I get that. Why didn't they just do Glover versus Jan? I feel like if Glover would have Glover was a minute away. This is the craziest part. Glover was a minute away from beating Jiri. Had he won that fight, we were getting Glover versus Jan too. Right?
100%. Yep.
Makes no sense. Truly makes no sense.